I'm Jen Moore, program annotator for Music of the Baroque. Welcome to Baroque Notes, our virtual pre-concert lecture series. In this edition, I'm going to discuss the Brothers Haydn, our upcoming concert featuring music by Michael Haydn and his older brother, Joseph. These performances mark a few milestones for Music of the Baroque. It will be the first official appearance of Andrew McGill as our new chorus director. It is the final appearance of co-principal trumpet Charlie Geyer after 47 years with Music of the Baroque. And the Brothers Haydn concludes our 2021-22 season. Joseph and Michael Haydn were born in Rohrau, Lower Austria, Joseph in March 1732, and Michael in September 1737. Their careers took them in different directions, but they remained devoted to one another throughout their lives. As boys, each left home to become choristers at St. Stephen's Cathedral in Vienna, where Michael reportedly had a soprano voice even more beautiful than his brother's. They soon went their separate ways. Joseph traveled in the highest musical circles at Esterhazy, Vienna, and London. Michael settled in Salzburg around June 1763, right around the same time the Mozart family embarked upon their grand tour of Europe. An entry in the Salzburg court diary on July 24, 1763 read, "The princely table was held today in the salon of Mirabell Palace on account of the rainy weather. It consisted of 24 ordinary members and 8 guests. Tafelmusik was presented by an outside composer from Vienna by the name of Michael Haydn." As musicologist Daniel Hertz notes, Vice Kapellmeister Leopold Mozart's absence and the uncertainty over when he would return probably helped to ensure that Michael Haydn would not long remain an outsider. A few weeks later, Michael Haydn became court musician and concertmaster to Archbishop Sigismund Schrattenbach with an annual salary of 300 gulden, the same as Leopold Mozart's. Michael Haydn finally met the Mozart family upon their return to the city in late 1766. Leopold never quite warmed to Michael, suspecting him of wanting to usurp his position. Leopold's daughter Nannerl also disliked him, and Leopold tried to sway Wolfgang to his side too. After the death of Anton Adlgasser in December 1777 left the organist post at Holy Trinity vacant, Leopold wrote to his son, "Who do you suppose has become organist at Holy Trinity? Herr Haydn. Everyone laughs about it. He will be an expensive organist, for after every litany, he gulps a viertel of wine, and to other services, he sends Herr Lipp, who also drinks." The following June, Leopold reported, "In the afternoon, Haydn played the organ for the litany and the Te Deum Laudamus, the Archbishop being present, but so frightfully that we were all scared and thought he was going the way of the late Adlgasser. But it was only a slight tipsiness that made it difficult for him to get his hands and head together." He went on to predict that Haydn would either, quote, "drink himself into dropsy," end quote, or, quote, "as he is too lazy for anything, would go on getting lazier and lazier as he grows older," end quote. Eager to make his father happy following the death of his mother, Mozart responded, "I had to laugh heartily at Haydn's tipsiness. If I had been there, I should certainly have whispered in his ear, 'Adlgasser.' It is really a shame when so skilled a man, through his own fault, renders himself incapable of performing his duties at a function in God's honor, and in the presence of the Archbishop, the whole court, and with the church full of people. That is disgusting. This is also one of the chief reasons that make me hate Salzburg, those coarse, slovenly, and dissolute court musicians." Michael Haydn's reputation as a composer who drank away his career persists today. This portrait, however, may be inaccurate and simply the result of a rumor that sprang from Leopold Mozart's worry that Michael would replace him. As Hertz summarizes, this smacks of both spite and self-delusion. Haydn remained active as a composer, unlike Leopold. In his main specialty, sacred music, much of his best work still lay ahead of him at this time. Michael Haydn also served as teacher and mentor to notable composers who came after him, including Carl Maria von Weber and Anton Diabelli. Despite Leopold's best attempts to discredit Michael Haydn, Wolfgang admired his music. After the death of Archbishop Schrattenbach in 1771, Michael wrote a requiem that influenced Mozart's own Köchel 626 20 years later. In 1783, he helped Michael, who was ill, fulfill a commission for 6 violin viola duets from Archbishop Colloredo by writing 2 of them. And after his father's death in 1787, Wolfgang invited Michael to visit him in Vienna. After a long period with little communication, Joseph and Michael Haydn met again at the end of the 1790s in Vienna, and in 1802, Michael sought his brother's opinion when he was offered lucrative and honorable positions by Esterhazy and the Grand Duke of Tuscany. Michael ultimately stayed in Salzburg, where he died in 1806, 3 years before his brother at 68. If Michael Haydn was well respected in his day, what's happened to his music? Unlike both Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart and Joseph Haydn, Michael was content to remain in one place throughout his entire career. Also, unlike Mozart and his older brother, Michael Haydn never sought to have his music printed, nor did he catalog his works. This means that today it is more difficult to locate scores and parts for performance. This may seem like a simple point, but it is actually quite important. After he performed The Chevalier, Bill Barclay's concert theater work about the life of 18th century composer Joseph Boulogne, I looked for the score of one of his Symphony concertantes and learned that it is quite difficult to find good editions of his compositions. This means that any orchestra wanting to perform Boulogne's music faces difficulties just in obtaining scores and parts. Turning back to Michael, there are several different catalogs of his music. In the 1900s, Lothar Perger created a catalog now considered to be inaccurate, assigning the works Perger numbers that are still used today. Charles Sherman later corrected Perger's work, producing a new list of Sherman numbers in 1982. Just over a decade later, in 1993, Sherman and Donnelly Thomas created a rigorous chronological listings of Haydn's oeuvre, assigning them MH numbers. Depending on the source, the work on tonight's program is Perger 26, Symphony number 34, or the Symphony in E-flat major, MH 473. Whatever the designation, the work shares its key and 3-movement structure with Mozart's Symphony number 26, which is also on the program. The opening Allegro con brio and concluding Allegro begins similarly, but the former launches a traditional sonata Allegro form, while the latter begins a short fugato. In between is a graceful and elegant adagietto, the bassoon taking the lead throughout the short movement. Let's listen to a little of the adagietto. If one were to assess the relative merits of the brothers Haydn, it would be more fair to compare a work like Michael Haydn's Requiem to Joseph Haydn's 45-minute Creation Mass in a short symphony, so I am not going to do that. Instead, let's talk about Joseph Haydn's sacred music in its own right. According to his biographer Griesinger, Joseph Haydn sometimes wondered if, instead of so many quartets, sonatas, and symphonies, he should have written more vocal music. Our modern image of Haydn tends to neglect his vocal compositions, but sacred music played a unique role in his musical development. His formative musical experiences were as a choir boy, and his first and last compositions were mass settings. His masses were popular during his lifetime, traveling to Catholic countries along the Danube and making their way into concert halls after Breitkopf and Hertel published 7 of them in the first part of the 19th century. And spirituality figured prominently in Haydn's compositional process. As Griesinger reports, if, when I am composing, things don't go quite right, I heard him say, I walk up and down the room with my rosary in my hand, say several Aves, and then the ideas come again. While his instrumental music is inspired, Haydn's sacred music, particularly his 12 complete and authenticated Mass settings, may bring us closest to the source of his artistic inspiration. For decades, those in charge at Esterhazy were not interested in church music. After he replaced his father in 1794, the new prince, Nicholas II, called his Kapellmeister back into service. As part of his duties, Haydn had to write a mass each year to celebrate the name day of Princess Marie Ermengild, Nicholas II's wife. Between 1796 and 1802, Haydn composed 6 masses to fulfill this responsibility, including the Nelson Mass, the Teresa Mass, and the Creation Mass. While Haydn's relationship with Nicholas II was sometimes rocky, the princess was much friendlier than her notoriously difficult husband, and reportedly made sure that Haydn was served his favorite wine, Malaga, on a regular basis. Perhaps the exuberance of these late masses, which some deemed too cheerful to be sacred, is due at least in part to his warm relationship with the princess. First performed on September 13, 1801 at the Feast of the Holy Name of Mary, the Creation Mass derives its nickname from a notorious musical reference to Haydn's famous oratorio, The Creation, which had premiered in 1798. Although he was nearly 70, Haydn was still very much involved in the performance of his music. As one orchestra member later reported, when unhappy with the organist's rendition of a solo passage in the Mass, Haydn ran with the agility of a weasel to the organ and played it himself. While no specific account of the name day festivities exists, it was reported that Haydn's brother Michael was present at the Creation Mass's first performance and conducted the Teresa Mass on October 4th at Laxenburg Castle, the summer residence of Nicholas II. One of the Creation Mass's most distinguishing features is its marvelous musical illustration, and the Gloria provides perhaps the most distinctive and certainly best known example. Shortly after the powerful choral opening, horns announce the melody from Adam and Eve's duet, The Dew-Dropping Morn, How She Quickens All, from the Creation. The familiar tune subsequently accompanies the phrase, Qui tollis peccata mundi, who takes away the sins of the world, making the wry connection between the sins of the world and its original sinners, as Griesinger explains. In the Mass which Haydn wrote in the year 1801, it occurred to him at the Qui tollis that weak mortals sinned mostly against moderation and chastity only. So he set the words Qui tollis peccata mundi entirely from the passage in the Creation, Der tauende Morgen, o wie mir muntert er. In order that this profane thought should not be too conspicuous, however, he let the Miserere enter right afterward with the full chorus. Let's listen to a bit of Adam and Eve's duet from the Creation. And now, the Qui tollis from the Creation Mass. This is the Trinity Choir and Soloists with Rebecca Baroque Orchestra, led by Dame Jane Glover. While the brief appearance of this familiar melody probably made many in the audience smile, at least one of Haydn's admirers was not amused. Empress Marie Therese was so upset by Haydn's reuse of secular music in the Mass that Haydn felt compelled to write an alternate version of this section for her. Other picturesque elements are less controversial. In the Credo, a delicate organ obbligato, evoking a dove's fluttering wings to symbolize the Holy Ghost, introduces at Incarnatus Est, a slow rhapsodic solo that poetically underscores the birth of Christ. The chorus's forceful introduction at the phrase sub Pontio Pilato, passus et sepultus est, under Pontius Pilate was suffered and was buried, further emphasizes this vital liturgical moment. I hope you enjoy the Brothers Haydn, the final concert of our 2021-22 season, on Sunday, May 8th at the North Shore Center in Skokie, Monday, May 9th at the Harris Theater for Music and Dance in Chicago, and on demand through June 13th. Please join us also for our 52nd season, which begins in September with Handel's final oratorio, Jephthah. The year also includes the St. Matthew Passion, which we have not performed for 15 years, guest conductor Patrick Dupre Quigley, pianist Gabriela Montero, and much more. You'll find complete details at baroque.org. Thank you so much.